I want you to walk us through what your creative process is when you create a song. Like,
Okay.
so you have your guitar in your hand.
Yeah.
How would you start potentially creating a song?
Well, it depends. Like,
What kind of inspiration you would need? Would it be
do you
music?
wait for inspiration to strike, or do you just start noodling and humming and?
I like the noodling and humming and playing along. Like, so blow the candles out. I was going through. I was the long process of getting through the after effects of a breakup. It was a long road out, and this was quite like in the year afterwards, and that was just pretty tough. And I felt like I was drowning a little bit, and so I took myself up state up to like a cabin. It wasn't really a cabin; it was more like a trailer on a cabin on the river. It was a trailer on a stream, and I wanted to kind of feel the feelings, like finally. And that was a bit terrifying because they were big feelings, and they were like, ugh. But my plan was to get up there, journal, fucking meditate, really spend a lot of the days processing, and then in the evening I set up like a little writing and recording scenario, and I would just sit down, pad here and guitar. And I remember like going, I think this was the first one I came up with on that little week, and I was like, I think I always go to just like, I'm not like somebody that has such a playpen of guitar ideas that who knows what's going to come out of me. It's going to be like a couple things, So I'm probably going to start like if I feel
you
like
end up with very creative progressions.
But a lot of times I'm just going to go like, I have a story to tell, or I need to set. So like loads of time, like I'll start in C, and I remember like playing around things, and I was a bit bored, and I was like, the capo, is a great way of like shaking things up, Right. It really does. It changes your world for a second. So like, for instance, just like C, we know you very well, C. We love you and all.
Maybe not today,
but you ain't special. For me, the difference of playing the same shape chord, up 3 steps. Do you hear the difference of that?
Right.
Well, you're also going to sing different things.
No, but right? I believe in the different, like, human values, or as we relate to them, of the notes. There's not just, like, different notes really, like, I mean, not for nothing, on the spectrum in frequency,
right?
There's different colors.
Have different emotions.
And colors affect us different things. Like, that's so, for me, like, playing C is such a broad place conceptually that it's too broad to tell my story. Mm-hmm. If I do this, I already feel that.
We've walked into a room.
We've walked in the room. It's narrowed. Like the lens is narrowed. The focus is different.
Now you're in a different key right now.
I'm in a different key. So this is E flat. So like here, and what I just was talking to you guys about in the trailer, when I did that, I was like, oh, I'm in business now, but I'm also in trouble in that this is about to get very real. I knew. I knew. So I was like, what I was just talking to you about in terms of like not putting anything on me to do the job, but removing everything. I was like, I just started playing, and thankfully and happily it started with, and I just immediately started like, and I was like, when you come up with something like that initially, you go, cool, this sounds pretty from a well-known world. Sure. We've heard hundreds of songs in that thing. Am I actually going to make something unique out of this? Who knows? So you hang out in it for a while. the tendency is to kind of get, prove to yourself that you're working by being clever, or like, oh, maybe I can get something clever. Oh, this is new. This is something worth doing. Or if you're kind of zen enough and open enough, and you're just going to let the things happen, then the story that you've got inside is going to have space to come out. And that's really, it's really what happened. And by the time I got to the chorus of na 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 na, like that, na 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 na, that was telling my story.
Beautiful.
Na 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 na. Like if I go back there, I'm as sad as I was.
Yep.
Na 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 na. I ain't getting any younger, there's no doubt.
Is that the way you write? You'll hum first before you fill in the words?
Yeah,
Okay.
because like I was saying, it's the quickest way for me to actually write the words, because
and get the melody.
Well, when I'm writing the melody, I am expressing the story before I've put words. Like I'm actually telling the story already by singing what I'm singing.
And the melody will tell you what the words
Exactly.
should be. Right.